Hi, welcome to the Haven Writers Guild podcast.
We invite you to join us as we explore the curious world of writing.
So today we're talking about studying creative writing. Both of us are students of creative writing. We're doing creative writing courses. I like saying the word creative writing because I think it's got a certain stigma to it.
Yes, definitely. Do you want to elaborate on what that is?
So for me, creative writing, I remember when I was 17 trying to write my first book, and someone said to me, "You should do a creative writing course." And I was like, creative writing course. Those things are lame. So I think that's the stigma. Obviously, I got over that over the years. But yes, so creative writing has this, I think, this certain stigma around it. So what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I had a more idealistic opinion of that. Everyone there would be very intelligent and well-spoken and brilliant and full of ideas. And of course, that's exactly how it was.
Well, it is, yeah. We're surrounded by lots of intelligent... lots of intelligent,
but I
insightful
think
people.
The one thing I think that is common to... I was surprised by how everybody was plagued by self-doubt.
Yeah.
Even the lecturers.
The teachers.
Well, I think I was expecting that I would sort of be surrounded by people who would kind of have a confidence in their decision to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. So that probably was my stigma around it.
Yeah, exactly. I think every person who does creative writing has that same thing. I know that, I just told you then when I was 17 and I said creative writing was absolutely rubbish. I think it took me till I was about 30, 35 before I actually embraced the actual creative writing part.
Yeah.
Because when I started studying again, obviously later in life, I started as an English course because I just couldn't bring myself to come under the umbrella of creative writing. So I started doing English and they changed it and I accepted it finally. So I'm very happy, even though it is difficult to tell people that I study creative writing. Because there's that justification for it that isn't really, it's just not a serious thing, you're not.
Absolutely.
Just. Yeah.
It's like the question always follows when you say, I'm studying creative writing, and it's like, oh, what are you going to do with that? With this, that slightly confused look on people's faces. What is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is just the whole, well, it usually comes back to money, doesn't it? Can you actually make money from that? Can you actually make money from doing that? It's like, I like to write books, but can you make money from doing that?
Yeah, and then somebody has to drop J.K. Rowling. Always.
Yeah, that's right. You said that in your blog, didn't you, about the Neverwhere?
Nevermore.
Nevermore. I'll always get the name wrong.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just it's an immediate comparison. Oh, you're a writer, so like J.K. Rowling. Oh, okay. Which I think has actually done a lot for the industry because people are like, no, you actually can make money.
Yeah, that's right. All these people are flocking back to it because of it, even though we resent the corniness of it. Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, there's
1 in a billion have actually made money, so it's viable.
Well, that's it. I think it's there's either complete and utter failure. You're as in you're J.K. Rowling, who's a complete and utter success, or you're a struggling artist, and that's who makes no money from writing. And what I found doing a creative writing course was that we discovered everything in between. There are different sections of people writing stories and just creating.
And some do take it very seriously. Others not at all. Others it's more about almost like a hobby, just something to do, just some sort of creative outlet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of this depends on what you want to get out of it. So I suppose the first thing is, it actually worth it to do a creative writing course? Do you think it's worth it? Or
me? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because we were talking to Roseanne Hawke yesterday, who's an author and a lecturer at Table.
That's right.
And one of the things she said is you can't teach creative writing.
No.
And her role as a lecturer, she said, it's not to teach it, it's to facilitate the learning of writing, really. Which I thought was interesting because that does often come up. How do you teach someone to write? Can you even teach someone to write? Because for me, when I first started the course, I was doing it more as a hobby.
Yeah.
And as I wrote, yes, I was learning, but it was more the process of being in a room full of people and talking about it, listening to different techniques, reading a lot for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
So sort of absorbing those other techniques. And then it was like waking up to the world of writing again. And for me, it was an incredible process and very healing and therapeutic and life-giving. So for me, it was definitely absolutely worth it. But I think if you go into a creative writing course expecting to be taught how to write, and then you'll finish the course and you'll be able to write a novel and it will be successful because you've done a creative writing course, I think that's probably not the wisest approach.
No, I mean, you can expect to get different things out. I mean, so let's take this back to the very start. I mean, we're mainly talking about tertiary studies, as in you get to college, or college in your America, and tertiary here. I suppose in before that you're being taught those basic skills of English. You're
Grammar,
reading, grammar and spelling, all that kind of stuff. It's that what to do with them all and what you actually put them together at is really sort of, which obviously is a thing you can't really teach, because your view of the world and how you put it onto a page is not something you can quite teach. I mean, you can probably give feedback and say, look, that doesn't sound right, but in general, if you see in the world in a certain way, and that's how you interpret it, then there's not really much you can teach, can you? So basically, people who come to tertiary have got all the skills they need, don't they? Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think, like you said, there's a range of different experiences that come into a classroom, and how people have assimilated that information can vary widely. And I think some people do need a bit of a brush up on grammar and punctuation and sentence structure, and you can certainly learn those things at tertiary level. But I think a lot of that comes from being made to read and read widely.
Yeah.
And then you do absorb that through the process. So yeah, I mean, do you think it's worth studying?
I do, yes. I mean, I was very resistant to study writing, and so it took me a long time to accept it, obviously. But what I was reminded over the years by various people, my parents, colleagues, that you need a community and other people to bounce ideas off, because you need feedback, you need inspiration. Being a writer is very lonely most of the time. I mean, most of my friends had no interest in writing books, any of that kind of thing, so I found myself very isolating. So it was always something I did by myself behind closed doors, and because of that I did a lot of it, but I didn't get any better. And it wasn't until I actually did a course that I started to put everything together, because I looked at a lot of my pieces when I was younger, and my writing style hasn't changed that much. It's still got the same voice there. It was just the choices that I was making. I was just walking into a room and I was just describing everything without, any rhyme or reason. It had nothing to do with moving the plot forward. So that was the basic element that I put in my stories now, and it was only because of the course and the feedback. I hate feedback. No, that's not entirely true. I hesitate. It's always that thing, you write something, you're really proud of it, and it's wonderful, and then the teacher or a colleague just says, "Oh yeah, that's really good, but have you seen this, and this?" So that definitely helps one improve, and I think you've really got to man up or woman up and be able to take that on board, because it's very important.
But that's another thing that's really valuable about studying creative writing, I think, is you basically need to decide whether you're going to be humble, whether you're able to be humble and actually take feedback and constructive criticism.
You're good at that?
I'm so good at that. I'm just really grateful for the input. No, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. But that's beside the point. I think the fact is, it puts you in an environment where you really need to be faced with things that you may need to look at in your own writing, which you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other thing that I think it does in a classroom environment is you're given deadlines.
Yeah.
So you actually have to not just explore other genres and accept criticism and look at your style of writing, but you have to do it within a time frame, which for writers, I think, is essential.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's That's one of the main things, isn't it? Sort of, I spent 5 years writing a novel, and it's never going to see the light of day, but it just kept on going on and again in my brain, and yeah, those deadlines that really bring everything together.
Yeah, well, I think it's easy to sort of say, oh yeah, I'm going to write a novel, or this is what I'm working on, or whatever. But being in that environment where you actually have to produce and complete something by a certain date, it shows you what you're actually capable of and what areas you may need to actually work on in terms of time management, which is, I think, worthwhile.
Yeah, I think some of the strengths and weaknesses of studying, I suppose, what you get to work on is generally short stories, because there's no scope really for novels.
Do you
I
think?
suppose. Yeah, well, mainly, you can't write a whole novel and workshop it throughout the term and all that kind of stuff. So basically, you're starting on short stories. So you're starting and stopping a lot, which is a little bit. After a while, it's like, okay, I need to just concentrate on one project. So I think that's one of the key points. I think short stories are great to begin with anyway, because they sort of I think a novel is made up of short stories anyway. So that's what you get, is you get scenes that you work on, and it forces you to concentrate on every aspect to move the story forward. So I think that's important. But in terms of novels, you may get a few ideas from them, but novel writing is still, I think, one of those things you really end up working on by yourself, because you literally, finding someone to read that, to edit it, it's really got to be paid work. You can get someone to read it, beta readers perhaps. But
yeah. Yes and no. I think you're right in that you can't work on a whole novel with the usual course time frame. But I think what a course gives you is networks.
Yeah.
So you actually do meet a whole bunch of people. Usually you will end up making some friendships with people who can, once the course is complete and you've actually not got access to that anymore, you usually, well, I've found you tend to have friendships and networks that will actually continue to support you and that you can speak to for help as you continue to work on your own creative writing beyond that classroom setting. Do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is sort of one of the aspects of not just studying, but the ultimate goal is actually to have a support network, some kind of support network that you can get unbiased feedback from family, you can get editing, you can get, so you need the whole package really. You can't just be one person by yourself. But yes, definitely you meet people, and it's the networks that you gain through the courses. You may not meet that many people, but I think it's not enough to be a writer in this day and age and to be isolated and to not be engaging with other people. Because I think if you've got to be a writer, you've got to engage with other people. You hear their stories, no matter what you think of them. So yeah, absolutely, support networks are very important.
I mean, I've heard it said, and I actually did once have the opinion that why bother studying creative writing when people like Hemingway and, Charles Dickens and these people, they didn't go to university and study creative writing. They wasn't, did they? No.
I think probably they did, but maybe not creative writing. I think a lot of these. Well,
they just sat down and wrote a book. There wasn't this kind of tertiary environment where.
Well, a lot of them, in all fairness, were actually studying at Harvard or universities, but they were studying other things. They were studying.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't a creative writing.
Creative writing specifically.
In a major that you could go and just study the technique of writing. If you wanted to write, up until recently, you'd just write. However, they were their own kind of group. I mean, in that period of time, writers would work with other writers. They would connect. They would discuss. They would argue. They would wrestle with ideas and theories and topics and share their work with one another through letter writing or through meeting together or, all this kind of thing. So before we had this tertiary kind of setting where you could go and just specialise in creative writing, people were actually doing it. They just weren't doing it formally.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that, because I suppose I want to touch on that part about being an individual writer, as in, I mean, for me, one of the reasons I didn't want to do creative writing is because I looked at all these people and thought, well, they didn't need study, they didn't need all these things, they just sat down and wrote a book. And for me personally, I still feel a little bit inadequate because I actually need a lot of help constructing a manuscript. Like, I need a lot of editing, I need a lot of feedback, I need a lot of workshopping in order to bring something together. And I think this is true for a lot of other writers as well. To get away from this whole idea that, there's someone somewhere, they sit down on a typewriter and they
Yeah.
bash out.
Like in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they usually bash out a first manuscript and they say, oh, you know, the first one's always really bad, and then they work on it until it's perfect. But they don't mention all the other people and all the other that are helping and supporting them and editing them and all this kind of stuff, and the publishers and all this kind of stuff. So a writer is not an island. I think that's it.
Nice.
I sort of, yeah, that's my things for the day. But I liken it to a movie. You know, you've there's all these people that work on a movie to create this thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's all these, and it's the same with a book. There's a team of people creating something. And look, I mean, I need a lot of editing. I don't, and you know, I'd basically chop up the whole manuscript and start again, and it's like, you know, Tetris sometimes. But I'd like to think I get something out of it at the end, and I'm not ashamed to say, you know, I still get confused with adjectives and nouns and pronouns and various bits and pieces, but I like to think I'm a relatively alright writer, so I think everyone else out there should feel okay if they're not perfect.
Oh, absolutely. I think this idea that someone can sit down at a typewriter and just bash out a novel is a ideal situation, but an unrealistic one. Yeah, I mean, you look at any novel and the acknowledgements page.
Yeah.
And authors are usually very careful to thank all these people, like a page or two or three or more of people who have been part of the process, whether it's just someone to bounce ideas off or, you know, read or give feedback or just put up with them.
Yeah.
You know, like there is a massive amount of work that goes into, putting together a novel. But I do think, you know, who reads the acknowledgements page, you know?
Yeah.
People just look at the final product, which is what you're saying about the movie, and they go, wow, that person's a really great director or screenwriter or whatever, but there's so much more that goes into it. And I don't think that ever ends. I think that's a lifetime thing. I don't think you ever get to the point where you're like, okay, I've done the course, I know how to write, I don't need anyone anymore.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm perfect now.
I'm going to become a lecturer.
That's right. It's the ultimate aim is to be a lecturer. Yeah, but I mean, I suppose there are people out there, authors that who are like that, though, who actually have that ability, which, you know, insanely jealous of, you know, who can sit down and lock themselves in the cabin somewhere and write all their own stuff.
No,
and
I don't reckon there is.
And stuff.
They may do that, but they'd have to come out of the cabin sooner or later, and they have to share it.
Yeah.
And so there is always someone, unless they die, and then their work is discovered years later and becomes incredibly successful. And, you know, that's unlikely, really. Anyway, the point is, studying creative writing is worth it.
It is worth it, yes. I was reading, basically this discussion came off this article. I won't go into it. It's basically this girl who does study creative writing in Australia. Here we have help, you know, HECS debt from the government. Government give us money to put towards her education. So she had a $60,000 HECS debt, which is quite a lot. And I think you and I, you know, we have the same thing, so we have a fair amount of debt as well. I suppose the thing is that really worth it as well, you know?
That's a big question. Well,
I mean, her whole thing was, or are you getting out of it? You know, is it really that worth it? I mean, ultimately, how much money are you making from it in the end anyway? So.
Well, that's the thing, and again, you know, you either become J.K. Rowling and have millions of dollars and you can pay back your debt without any concern, or you remain a struggling artist and no, you don't pay it back. But I think if you're looking at studying creative writing from a financial point of view, I think maybe you're missing the point. And that may be easy for me to say because I love writing, but whether it's a hobby or whether you want to make a career out of it, I do believe that studying creative writing is worth it, regardless of the cost. Because what you get out of it, it can't be measured financially. It's not measured in, you know, oh, well, are you making money out of this? It's far deeper than that. It's something that you can take with you into life. It's writing isn't like studying dentistry, or not that there's anything wrong with dentistry.
A bit more practical.
It is, but that's the thing. It's practical. Creative writing may not be entirely practical.
However, yes, well, I'd like to bring it back to the actual practical part, which is the part where usually gets missed out. Is like I said before about that you've got the J.K. Rowlings and you've got the struggling artists. You know we're just doing it for the art. You know, and there are actually people in between. We were talking about Roseanne Hawke. Roseanne Hawke has been making I don't know her details, financial details, but she's been making a relatively living out of it, and she's sort of, you know, she's successful, but she's not too successful, and she's sort of, I like to think, middle of the road kind of authors who are putting out books at a regular basis.
Yeah, well, she's published over 25 books.
25 books,
so she's commercially successful, but not wealthy from it.
Exactly.
You know?
So that there are, I think it is quite a possibility that you can actually, you know, you pick your genre, you pick your niche, and you just start writing books, and you can be quite successful that way. I think you don't have to be a mega star. I think, you know, if you're thinking of success in those terms. And I know, speaking of Orson Scott Card, he was thinking about creative writing or writing novels on a commercial basis. And what his concept was, you know, if you've got a job and you're earning maybe, let's say, on the better half of $100,000 a year, in order to do that, you've got to be pumping out at least 2, maybe 3 really high-grade novels per year, you know, which is pretty difficult. So his whole thing was to get a job on the side, which is what most writers do.
However, I would say that if you spoke to Roseanne Hawke about her success, I could quite confidently say I think she would write anyway, even if it made nothing, because she loves it and there is nothing else she would rather be doing. Well, that's my assumption.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely there is the love, the struggling artist, the love, and there's the. But yes, I think the middle people as well. You know, the middle. When you got the students and they say, "Is creative writing worth it? Is writing novels worth it?" And I say, yes, it is. You can. My friends who are like, "Can you actually make a living do that? Is it worth it?" You know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal for us is to make it worth it and be able to survive financially.
Yeah.
You know, so then you look at other aspects like offering editing services and, you know, running writing workshops and doing what we can to support the writing community, do what we love, but also, you know, be able to put food on the table. So, yeah, I do think you need to have a practical approach in that way. I mean, you don't want to starve to death because you love writing. But if it is within your means and if it's something that you love to do or even are interested in doing as a hobby, I definitely think that it is worth it.
Excellent. So shall we leave it there?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Haven Writers Guild podcast today.
If you'd like more writing support, find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or on our website. Or you can email us directly at havenwritersguild@gmail.com.